As a lifelong gun owner, I understand the awesome responsibility of owning a weapon. After getting my concealed carry license many years ago, I came to understand the great responsibility of having a deadly weapon on my person. Now, as a constitutional scholar, I've come to realize just how badly states are infringing on our rights simply because we decide to exercise one of them. Today, I want to talk about duty to inform laws. After all, if the presence of a firearm is a threat to officer safety, then the officer's firearm is a threat to my safety. So we'll discuss that next on the Constitution Study.
Neighbors and have a few good friends. Every day we're everyday Americans. Oh, every day we're everyday Americans.
Hello there, everyday Americans. Paul Engel here with the Constitution Study, where we read and study the Constitution. Teach your and generation be free. I'm glad you could join me today. I haven't spent much time thinking about these laws, but duty to inform and duty to ID, these laws have been coming up more and more in some of my conversations. So I decided to do a bit more research on them and, of course, bring that now to you. I hope you'll enjoy this, and I hope you'll check out the article I wrote with all the links to my sources. You can find that at the website, constitutionstudy.com. I'll talk more about the website and some other things at the end of the episode, but for now, let's take a look at these duty to inform laws. In this episode, when I refer to duty to inform, I mean the legal requirement that a person, when they are contacted by law enforcement, to inform them that they are armed. Now, based on my research, currently 47 of 50 states have some form of duty to inform law. Most states have a requirement that you inform law enforcement if you have a firearm only if you are asked. However, 13 states require you to inform law enforcement of the presence of a firearm even before you're asked. Now, a duty to inform law is described by Concealed Nation as, duty to inform laws are crucial regulations that concealed carriers must understand to ensure both their safety and compliance with local statutes during encounters with law enforcement. I'll talk about compliance with local statutes later, but there is some logic in helping to ensure safety for both you and for law enforcement. The Concealed Nation's article goes on to say, the duty to inform law exists to maintain a clear line of communication between armed civilians and law enforcement officers. It aims to enhance officer safety. Knowing that an individual is armed allows officers to adjust their approach to ensure the safety and safety of others. Reduces misunderstandings. By disclosing the presence of a firearm, a concealed carrier can prevent a scenario where an officer might unexpectedly discover the firearm, potentially leading to defensive actions. And foster transparency. These laws encourage honesty and openness in interactions between armed citizens and police, fostering an environment of mutual respect and understanding. I do want to enhance safety, but not just for law enforcement. And I'll talk more about that later as well. Yes, the assumption is that all law enforcement is armed, so I can understand them wanting to know if they have a tactical advantage in such a situation or not. But if the idea that an armed citizen is a threat to officer safety, then an armed officer is a threat to citizen safety. After all, if a citizen draws a gun on law enforcement, it's a crime. But if an officer draws their gun on a civilian, it's their job. Yes, we should want to reduce misunderstandings, but that only works when both sides are open and transparent. Why should the presence of a firearm lead to defensive action only when in the possession of a civilian? Don't civilians have the same right to defend themselves as law enforcement? Do we not have a right protected by the Constitution of the United States to be armed? The constitutions of most of our states recognize that all power is inherent in the people. Shouldn't we be able to exercise that power without fear that a government actor has legal protections if they overreact to that fact? If states want to foster transparency, why do they allow their officers to lie to citizens, then claim it's a crime for citizens to lie to officers? That does not foster transparency, but suspicion. With the law, details matter. Take, for example, my home state of Tennessee. Now, when I started researching this article, I found several websites that claim that Tennessee has a duty to inform law. That's not exactly what I found. As I stated above, like most people, when I hear duty to inform, I think of a legal requirement to inform law enforcement if you are in possession of a firearm. However, when I dug into the Tennessee law these sites were referring to, I found something different. According to Tennessee law, the permit holder shall have the permit in the holder's immediate possession at all times when carrying a handgun in a location or manner that would be prohibited if not for the person's status as a concealed handgun carry permit holder, and shall display the permit on demand of a law enforcement officer under such circumstances. So the Tennessee Code annotated that cited as a duty to inform law actually only requires a permit holder to display the permit when demanded by law enforcement, and only if they are in a location where they are required to have a permit to be in possession of a firearm. Tennessee is a permitless carry state, so in most locations, a permit is not required to carry a firearm. Under this law, there is no time when a person is required to inform law enforcement that they are actually in possession of a firearm. There's a more important consideration with these laws: violations of the Constitution of the United States. Sure, there's the Second Amendment issue, but these laws violate the Fourth and Fifth Amendment as well. Most of you are probably aware that the Fourth Amendment protects you against unreasonable searches and seizures. But when are you being searched? And when are you being seized? And what makes them reasonable? In Terry v. Ohio, the Supreme Court said, whenever a police officer accosts an individual and restrains his freedom to walk away, he has seized that person within the meaning of the Fourth Amendment. So when you are stopped by the police, you have been seized and you are in custody, which requires reasonable suspicion. That means for law enforcement to stop you, they must be able to articulate a reasonable suspicion of your participation in a crime, either past or future. Again, from Terry v. Ohio, under the Fourth Amendment of the United States, a police officer may stop a suspect on the street and frisk him or her without probable cause to arrest if the police officer has a reasonable suspicion that the person has committed, is committing, or is about to commit a crime and has a reasonable belief that the person may be armed and presently dangerous. Does this logic not extend to having to admit that you are armed? If an officer must have reasonable suspicion of a crime to stop you, shouldn't they need a similar reason to ask if you are armed? And since this is a right protected by the Constitution of the United States, shouldn't the state also be required to show reasonable suspicion before demanding you speak? After all, the law enforcement officer who has stopped you is armed and, by logic of this case, may be presently dangerous to you. Why should a level playing field between citizen and law enforcement be considered a problem? If we're going to talk about speaking, we have to include the Fifth Amendment. One of the constitutional protections that I see often misquoted comes from the Fifth Amendment. Nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. Notice, it's your right to not be a witness against yourself, whether it would incriminate you or not. Now, you may not be criminally charged when you encounter law enforcement, but if these laws make it a crime to not inform law enforcement, then that would make it a criminal case. So how can the state require me to be a witness against myself in what may become a criminal case? The Fifth Amendment protection is not against self-incrimination, but self-witness. If you are required to tell someone you are in possession of a firearm, you are witnessing against yourself, especially if you are carrying concealed. That makes these laws a violation of the Fifth Amendment. Now, I think I've shown that these duty to inform laws violate both the Fourth and Fifth Amendment to the Constitution. Yet each and every day, people are told they have to allow these violations of their rights as a condition of exercising a right protected by the Constitution. Remember, the Supreme Court believes that to establish reasonableness to detain and search a person, law enforcement must be able to articulate a reasonable suspicion of a crime. Searching you for a firearm, even verbally, is unreasonable without such suspicion, and therefore violates your rights protected by the Constitution. It does not matter if your alleged duty requires the officer to ask. Without reasonable suspicion, that is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Demanding that you witness against yourself is a violation of the Fifth Amendment. Again, if law enforcement has a reasonable, articulate suspicion that you have or are about to commit a crime, they've established a reasonable search. But your right against self-witness is not based on reasonableness, like your right to not be searched. For these reasons, along with your right to remain silent, I do not see how the state can demand that you identify whether or not you are armed. Even if there are state or local laws that require this violation of the Constitution, you can always point to the Supremacy Clause. This Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. That said, there are situations where, both for your safety and the safety of other innocent people who may be in the proximity, I think it would be a good idea to let law enforcement know that a firearm is present. For example, if you are getting out of a car or being patted down while armed, or if you are reaching for something where a gun is being stored, I think it would be a good idea to inform the officer of the presence of a gun rather than allowing them to discover it for themselves. It's not that the officer can legally compel you, but for your safety, since you do not know how any specific officer may react to the discovery of an illegally possessed firearm. What I find most concerning is the ongoing attempt by government actors and our elected representatives to create a disparity of power where we the people are expected to be subjects to the governments we created. This ongoing attempt to make law enforcement rulers over the people they have sworn to protect and serve is not only antithetical to the constitutional republic, but to a free people. It is also a violation of federal law. Article 18, Section 242. Whoever, under color of any law, statute, ordinance, regulation, or custom, willfully subjects any person in any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district to the deprivation of any rights, privileges, or immunities secured or protected by the Constitution or laws of the United States shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. This is why I urge you to contact your state representatives and urge them to rescind these duty to inform laws. In this country, we are not only to be assumed innocent until proven guilty, but we have the right to be both secure from unreasonable searches and to not be forced to witness against ourselves. Since these rights are protected by the Constitution of the United States, those laws are already void. Shouldn't those who represent us fulfill their oath to support the Constitution of both their state and the United States? Shouldn't they do all they can to avoid the confusion that can reduce the safety of officer and citizen alike? Because these laws merely make the citizen a defenseless potential victim of law enforcement hubris. I understand the nervousness that a law enforcement officer has when they approach a vehicle or a person on the street. They don't know what they're getting into, but they have a higher responsibility because they are acting in the name of government. If you are required to disclose something you don't want to disclose, that violates your rights. And again, there are situations where for your safety, it's a good idea. The same way, if I'm asked for my driver's license, I'm going to tell the officer my wallet is in my back pocket, and can I reach for it? If I'm reaching somewhere where there's a firearm, I want to let him know because he may look at it and say, hey, what kind of gun is that? Or he may look at it and think it's an immediate threat and draw his weapon on me. And it's a very short finger pull from drawing a weapon to shooting somebody. I'd rather not have that happen to me. But it's a question of rights. If I inform him voluntarily because I wish to maintain safety, that's one thing. When the state tells me I must protect his safety, that's something completely different. That is an elevation of government actors above the people, and that's wrong. That's why I did this episode today, was to inform you of something you may not have thought of. It's these little things we don't think of that we encounter and then go, well, what next? To me, that's how we learn to defend and assert our rights, by thinking, what is the situation? What does the Constitution say? What do the laws say? What do we need to do? It's what I do here at the Constitution Study. And I hope you support the work that we do here. I hope you'll come back and maybe bring some friends, maybe point people to the website, constitutionstudy.com, look at some of the articles, some of the videos. Hey, maybe ask a question or join a mailing list. All of this there is to provide information for you to help you live free and defend and assert your rights. You can also work by supporting organizations that support the work that we do here. Like the course Miracle of America. It's a great little course I found that looks at our history from the Pilgrims through the drafting of the Constitution. It helps explain why the Declaration and Constitution were drafted the way they were. I thought it was such a great course, I made a deal with the owner to get you a lesson free. Go to constitutionstudy.com/1776 study guide. You can read up about the course, but best of all, you can enroll for a free lesson on God's natural law. Certainly worth the price. I think it's worth your time. Now, if you like the whole course, you can sign up for the whole thing for just $17.76. But take that first lesson, constitutionstudy.com/1776 study guide, and try it out. I think you'll like it enough to want to buy the whole thing. You can also use your cell phone to support the Constitution Study. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. I've been a customer of theirs for years. That's why I decided to partner with them to help support the work that we're doing here. Go to patriotmobile.com/constitution, find a plan that works for you. They've got the same coverage, 4G and 5G coverage as the major carriers on all the same towers. Once you find a plan, when you go to checkout, be sure to use the code Constitution to get free activation. Again, that URL is patriotmobile.com/Constitution to find a plan that works for you. And the code for free activation, well, that's Constitution as well. So join us here at Patriot Mobile. Not only do you get great wireless service, but you help support great organizations, including the Constitution Study, to help protect your rights. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I really hope you liked enough to share with friends and family and let other people know what's going on. I also hope you liked enough to come back and join us here next time when we meet together for the Constitution Study.